Welcome in. What's the spread? We are off and running in December. The calendar is turning. 2020 is almost over. We're so close.
So close.
2021 right around the corner. The weather is changing. Championship Saturday is so close. You know, in a normal college football season, Championship Saturday would be this Saturday.
Yes.
We would already be there. I mean, that's what I associate December with is, championship games.
Yep.
Big Ten championship, SEC championship. It's one of the best days of the year. We got to wait a few more weeks for that because we got a couple more weeks here to play out. But man, there is a lot to talk about here with the rankings.
There's a lot to talk about and a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, I agree.
Looking at the initial rankings from college football playoffs, looking at our rankings, it made me really want to talk to you about a couple things because there's so much confusion for me, probably like 6 through 10, where it's just my mind just goes in different directions because at some points I use criteria for some teams that doesn't apply to other teams, and I'm like, am I being unfair? So
when you're using a subjective process like the college football playoff committee is, it's not the computers anymore. It's not the BCS anymore. This for me was the toughest top 10 to choose from because now we're starting to see, at least for me, I'm starting to get some 2-loss teams, ahead of undefeated teams, and there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of confusion with Ohio State right now, whether or not they're going to play enough games to even qualify for the Big Ten championship. We've got teams that their season is winding down and they're ready for the playoff, but there's still a lot to figure out. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let me hear your 10 through 6, and we'll talk it out.
Okay, so coming at number 10, BYU 9-0. For me, it was tough to leave them out of the top 10. I think they've done enough. They've destroyed the opponents they've played, and they're undefeated.
Okay.
And my number 9, Ohio. Excuse me.
You better watch it out.
I saw the Ohio State and Iowa State.
Iowa State.
Iowa State, I wanted to rank them higher. I mean, they have multiple ranked wins. Their losses are against ranked teams, but they are where they are on my schedule. Okay. On my rankings. At number 8, Cincinnati. I don't have Cincinnati as high as everyone else because why are we going to punish teams like Indiana for not having good quality ranked wins, but Indiana lost one game to the number 3-4 team in the country?
And Indiana is winning the games on their schedule just like Cincinnati, but they're winning it in a tougher conference.
Yes.
And there's not as much of a chance to lose when you play in the American as there is in the Big Ten.
I think this is the grossest thing that the critics, the fans are saying is, I don't have Indiana ranked, but why are you rewarding Cincinnati for beating lesser opponents?
Well, aren't you saying that that's what you're doing right now?
No, I'm saying I can't have Cincinnati any higher than 8. I don't think they will ever go higher than 8.
The committee has them, 7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think 8 is their ceiling. I had 7 as my ceiling before,
right?
But then I had to knock them down because if I'm going to be a college ranker, if I'm going to rank the playoffs, I have to use the same criteria for every single team. And I docked Indiana. Why is Cincinnati get any higher than 8?
Hey, I can't fault you for having them in the top 10. A lot of people do have them in the top 10, like we said.
My max.
Yeah, and that's fine. The committee has them at 7. I just can't, no matter how dominant BYU and Cincinnati have looked, I just can't justify putting them ahead of any Power 5 teams right now. Who has Cincinnati even played? Who have they beaten? I mean, nobody even close in the top 25. Tulsa is the other American team in the top 25, and they haven't played yet.
Yes.
I mean, it's so difficult for me in a year like this. Cincinnati has looked good. They've looked dominant. But who are they playing? Who are they beating? I just feel like the committee this year is giving way more credence to the American Conference than they have ever before.
Exactly.
Even having Cincinnati as high as number 7.
And I like you saying that because when I think about what you're saying, having Cincinnati, okay, my Cincinnati 8 guys is a ceiling. Like, they can't go higher than that.
You're saying you're never putting them higher than 8.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
Why? You have Coastal Carolina, who I think has played like opponents, if not better. They have more ranked wins than Cincinnati. So why is Coastal way so low?
Why are we we were having this conversation a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Why are we saying that Coastal Carolina's undefeated record in the Sun Belt is any less impressive than Cincinnati's undefeated record in the American Athletic Conference when it's been proven this year that the Sun Belt's very competitive?
Yes.
There's a lot of good teams in that conference.
Has a ranked win against a conference opponent.
Right.
Name one
Louisiana is in the CFP top 25 right now. Coastal Carolina is in the top 25 right now. The Sun Belt and the American Athletic Conference have the same amount of ranked teams.
Yes.
In the committee's eyes. We're not talking about the AP poll. In the committee's eyes, that tells me that we're now comparing those conferences.
Yes.
Which is fair. I've always been a part of the side that thinks that the American is that middle tier conference, and I still believe that. But when we're looking at this year, I think that Cincinnati and Coastal Carolina have very comparable
Marshall's
resumes.
undefeated. I'm just so sick
Marshall too.
We're rewarding Cincinnati, and this is a legitimate argument that people have been saying that Cincinnati deserves a playoff spot. Well, what about Coastal Carolina? What about Marshall? Look at USC's undefeated.
Yeah. And why are we even talking about
Washington's undefeated?
Right. Why are we talking about Cincinnati earning a playoff spot when there's still so many good teams at the top who haven't lost yet?
Yeah.
So for those of you who say, let's get Cincinnati in the playoff, who are you putting them ahead of? You're putting them ahead of Ohio State? Ohio State season isn't over yet. We still have a shot to play the minimum amount of games. But you're going to put Cincinnati over Ohio State. Why? Just because Cincinnati's played more games?
Yeah, it's
Are
stupid.
you really going to tell me that Cincinnati would be favored in a matchup against Ohio State?
No, they would be a
Who's
20-plus
in
dog.
that game?
They would be a 20-plus dog.
Who's going to be favored in the Cincinnati versus Alabama game?
That's a 35-point dog.
Cincinnati versus Notre Dame. That's a 20-point dog. So what are we talking about here, guys?
It's gotten to me to a point so much where I have to literally log out of Twitter because I just can't. And like people are justifying it. They're like they deserve a top 4 ranking, and I'm sorry we got on a little tangent there.
Yeah. Well, here what the CFP committee is telling me these days is they use a very similar criteria that I use, and I'll get into that here. Is that I do take past seasons and program stability into account when I do my rankings.
Yep.
I think the committee is proving that they are doing the same thing.
Yes.
They are rewarding Cincinnati for the strength of their program, but why weren't they rewarding UCF on their 2-year undefeated run? Maybe it's because UCF did so much, for the American Athletic Conference that maybe, Cincinnati
they opened the eyes of everyone else. Yeah.
So anyway,
all right,
let's move on to number 7.
Number 7, Miami, 7-1. I mean, you win the games on your schedule.
Yeah.
ACC is looking stronger and stronger each week. Number 6, I have the Florida Gators.
Okay. That's your 10 through 6.
Yes.
I think that hasn't changed for you, right? You still got Florida behind A&M?
Yes.
I would assume. All right. So we'll go ahead and move over to mine. As I said, and this is tough for me. For Cincinnati and BYU, I will say this. I don't think I can put a 3-loss Power 5 team ahead of a Cincinnati or a BYU.
No.
So if Georgia or if Iowa State were to lose another game against an unranked team, then they're eliminated in my eyes.
Yes.
But here's why I have Iowa State at 10 and why I have Georgia at 9. Because originally when I saw that Georgia was in the top 10 last week, I was really upset. And last week I was, because there were enough one-loss teams ahead of them that deserved a spot in the top 10. We had Oregon lose.
Yep.
We had Northwestern lose.
Yep.
Now I don't know what to make of the Pac-12.
No.
I don't think there's any team even close in the Pac-12 that could compete with any of my teams in the top 10 outside of Iowa State, because I'm not impressed with the Big 12 either. However, I am going to award Iowa State for how well that they're playing right now, and I think that they are in my opinion, I think that they are the second best 2-loss team. As you mentioned, their losses are to a ranked Louisiana team and a ranked Oklahoma State team.
Yep.
And they have impressive wins.
Yes.
I believe they're in first place in the Big 12
they
now,
are.
right? So they are on track to win the Big 12. Impressive. You deserve a top 10 spot. Here's why I have Georgia at 9, and here's why I can agree with the committee having Georgia in the top 10. Guys, their losses were against Florida and Alabama.
Yes.
And if we're going to say that Florida and Alabama right now are top 5 teams, and Georgia has looked pretty good outside of those 2 losses, and they're playing in the toughest conference in the country, why shouldn't they be in the top 10?
Yeah, but they were borderline top 10 team for me. So it wasn't like I threw them out.
Right. And I was curious just kind of like where you had them.
My problem with
11,
Georgia
12?
is the same. I use the same criteria as the committee, but I have a hard time gripping when they're not playing well. They played well early, but they stopped playing good football. So to me, it kind of just like...
I've liked how they've looked with JT Daniels recently. They're not playing good teams, but here's the thing. I still have Indiana embedded in my top 10.
Yes.
Their wins aren't against ranked teams either, but what they're doing is they're competing in the Big 10 and they're winning week in and week out. So I see that for Georgia too. They don't have the wins.
Yeah.
But those 2 losses. Listen, if Cincinnati or BYU played Georgia's schedule, they would have 2 losses minimum.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Minimum.
Hands down.
If not 3 or 4.
Hands down.
So that's how I'm basing it off of. And people argue for Cincinnati BYU, we have to talk about this year, and that's fine. but I'm still comparing schedules this year.
Yes. No, totally fair.
So anyway, I just feel like because I was so against Georgia in the top 10 and now I have them in my top 10, I had to justify that.
Okay.
Number 8, I've got Miami. I'm still liking Miami.
I like that.
As you said, they're still finding ways to win.
Yep.
They've got a great quarterback in De'Aaron King that gives them a chance to win against any ACC opponent, maybe outside of Clemson.
Yes.
They just had that really bad showing against Clemson, but everybody has a bad showing against Clemson.
Yes.
Miami is a one-loss team in a competitive ACC that continues to find ways to win. Number 7, I have Texas A&M. Number 6, I have Indiana. I still have Indiana ranked ahead of Texas A&M. Penix going down for the season is bad for Indiana.
That sucks.
It hurts.
It sucks.
It's not looking good for them. But I'm not going to take them outside of my top 10 just because they lost Penix. I want to see how they look.
So what was your
Saturday.
criteria of ranking Indiana over Texas A&M?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I've had Indiana ranked over Texas A&M since we started our rankings.
Okay.
So I'm not going to move Indiana.
No, that's fair.
You know what I'm saying?
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Originally, I have Indiana ahead of Texas A&M. That has not moved for me. So I'm not going to change that.
No, that you don't have to. I didn't change anything. Just leapfrog somebody out of nowhere. Yeah.
And then so that's my 10 through 6. So let's go ahead and get into the top 5. Go ahead.
Top 5. I have the Texas A&M Aggies. Even outside of that lackluster performance against LSU, they're still, it's theirs to lose. That top 5 spot. If they lose a game or Florida wins the SEC championship, I think the only way they get ousted from that spot. Number 4, Clemson Tigers. And I don't agree with the committee dropping Ohio State to 4. What do you drop them for? I mean, Ohio State's still undefeated. Number 3, Ohio State.
Okay.
Notre Dame at number 2, and number 1, Alabama Crimson Tide.
So I'm very curious. So you have Ohio State over Clemson, where not a lot of people have that.
It's hard for me because you talk about last year, you talk about initial rankings. What has Clemson done to honestly jump Ohio State after they lost? You know what I mean? Because Ohio State hasn't lost a game. They haven't played 4 games.
Right.
You looked good against a top 10. I mean, you looked bad against a top 10 team, but bad. You won the game.
Won the game.
So for me, Clemson has a loss. And it's one of those gross things that had Oregon been a preseason top 5 team, like this before their loss, it'd have been a different story when we were talking about, do we have Oregon ranked this high? But you haven't lost. You're sitting at where I thought you would be sitting.
All right. I do want to get into that conversation, so let me go ahead and break down my top 5. I've got Florida at 5. I still feel like that Florida is exactly where they should be at 5, ahead of Texas A&M and ahead of Indiana. Number 4, I have Notre Dame. So I don't have Notre Dame ahead of Clemson or Ohio State. I dropped Ohio State to 3, but that's mostly because I'm angry at the Big Ten.
Punishment.
I'm just going to be honest. I'm over it. It's unbelievable this week in and week out how it's so stressful because now we're one cancellation away from having our entire season in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And it's already in jeopardy because we missed 2 games.
Yep.
I've got Clemson at number 2, and I thought about that. I'm very mad at the Big Ten. But also with Clemson, they just look like a different team with Trevor Lawrence.
They are a different team.
They just do, and they are. And
more than just what he does on the field, he's a leader.
Exactly.
That's what's so powerful about him. And
I want to reward Notre Dame for that for their win against Clemson. It was a good win, but it's just not the same when Clemson was without Trevor Lawrence because of a COVID issue. I think Clemson is by far the better team over Notre Dame, and I think that right now I haven't seen enough from Ohio State. Only 4 games. We've had 2 games canceled. That I'm fine having Clemson ahead of them. And of course, I got Bama at number 1. I think that right now, Bama is head and shoulders above the rest of the country. And I think that with Trevor Lawrence, if Trevor Lawrence never was out of games, I think Clemson would be in that conversation. Yeah. I think Clemson would have been that dominant, just as dominant as Alabama. And I think right now it's Bama and it's Clemson and it's everybody else.
And every year, this is about the time where we'll say like a couple weeks ago, you see the defense is starting to tighten up for Alabama, for Clemson, and they start to get into that groove.
Yeah.
And
as you said, I'm glad that you have Ohio State embedded in your top 4. I think that they haven't given us any indication that they're not a top 4 team, that they're not a top 4 program, and that they don't deserve a spot in the top 4 right now. But it's another conversation to have if we start to see more cancellations with Ohio State.
Yes.
If they can't play the minimum amount of games to qualify for the Big Ten championship, what happens then? That's a conversation that I hope we don't have.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, they're still eligible, they're still in contention, and they're looking like they're going to play Saturday. All right. So anything else that we wanted to say there?
No, I am excited to break down some of the college football games.
All right, let's get into it, man. A game that I thought, or that no one thought we would have.
Yeah.
But here we go. College game day. It was supposed to be Liberty, which I was excited about too.
I was excited too.
But we got number 13 BYU and number 18 Coastal Carolina. I mean, 6 months ago, if I would have told you that, what year would we have been in?
I'm like, whoa, I have no idea.
What is this? What is
There's
Coastal?
flying cars.
Yeah, unbelievable. BYU 10-point favorites here on the road. I'll go ahead and start. Both teams 7-1-1 against the spread.
Yeah.
So who do you go with? It's a quarterback battle for me. It's Grayson McCall, Zach Wilson, both having great seasons.
Yes.
Zach Wilson is getting the Heisman hype, probably because it's BYU and it's a bigger brand.
Yep.
But Grayson McCall has played really well too. Coastal has looked really competitive in the Sun Belt. And honestly, Brad, I think Coastal's had a tougher schedule than BYU.
I think so as well.
I like Coastal Carolina here, plus 10 at home. It's a lot of points for me. If this was anywhere in the 7 or 8 range, I'd probably lean towards BYU, but I'll take the points with Coastal here.
So I'm going to layer this bet. I'm on BYU no matter what.
Okay.
This is how I'm going to bet this game. I've already locked in BYU minus 10. Coastal will get the majority of the action.
Probably.
So the line will drop down to about 7.5, I think, is our floor. 8, our floor. I'm going to take BYU again for more. Reason being, this will be a double-digit victory for BYU. What do we know about Coastal Carolina? They are dominant. They are a top 10 run team in the country. They rush for about 220 run yards per game, throw for about 225. What do we know about BYU? They are a good run defensive team. They're top 10. They only allow 88 rushing yards per game.
Against two.
BYU has played some good running teams and some run dominant teams. That's where enough for me to start getting the nod. So then I think it's going to start to even out. Okay. So then I have to start look at games where Coastal played like a tough defense. Mm-hmm. Appalachian State. They scored 35 points in Appalachian State, right? That's the most misleading game ever because we had a 75-yard pass for a touchdown. We had a 65-yard run for a touchdown, and then we had the garbage points at the end. I think that Coastal Carolina will get to that 20-ish point range, the 24-point range, like they did against App State. But also in the App State game, Coastal Carolina was benefited with good field position by Zach Thomas throwing 3 picks. I don't think Wilson's going to throw the same amount of picks. Good thing for BYU is they only allow I don't have the top number off my head, 4.86 yards per play, which is light years better than any opponent Coastal Carolina's played, who normally averages somewhere of like 6.5 yards per play. I think BYU is going to limit the plays. It's going to be somewhere like a 45-28 to maybe 30 victory. It's going to be high scoring.
Yeah.
And what's this going to show you? And this is not a knock on Coastal at all. I think Chadwell has built this program in these, 2 years?
It's insane what he's done in this amount of time.
But I think that there are times when Grayson McCall has looked young. I haven't said that about Wilson. And it's going to be a scoring match. Let's consider it. This is a crappy analogy because I was going to use Alabama as an analogy, but that's too much. Let's consider it 2 very good offenses.
Yeah.
One defense a little bit better than the other. They're just going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But there's going to be a time where McCall's going to have to make the throws, and he's not going to be able to. And it's not a knock on him because I think he's a great quarterback. But I'm taking Wilson to make those throws the big times. This is going to be close all game.
I mean, listen,
then we're going to pull away.
It's going to come down to how McCall plays and if he can keep up with Zach Wilson.
I'm so excited for this game.
Yeah, he's got 20 touchdowns, only 1 interception. He's got another 5 rushing touchdowns. I just feel like, and he's almost the leading rusher on the team. I think he's like just under 500 yards.
Yeah.
But I think their leading back has like 800 yards. Coastal spreads the ball around very well on their offense as far as who's getting the ball, who's running the ball. I think they have 3 guys, including McCall, that are 500 or above. I think McCall is just under. Anyway, that 45, 30-ish range I can see, but I'm banking that McCall can make the throws. 45, 35 or 38, 28.
Before we depart from this game,
yeah, sure.
That's the question I want to ask. Who benefits more from the win?
Yeah, I saw that you asked that question on Twitter, and my answer is nobody.
Nobody.
This doesn't matter.
This game
literally doesn't matter. But I'll tell you, for college football fans, it's a dream come true.
It's a beauty.
Because this is what should be happening every year.
Yes.
Is that these teams should be finding ways to play each other.
They should bracket in 2
even
bye
in short
weeks
notice.
for a short notice
They
games.
should. I mean, why are we not doing this?
Yeah.
And also, why are we, if you're a group of 5 program, besides getting a check from like an Ohio State or an Oklahoma and going to play them, why are you scheduling your non-conference games so far in advance?
Yeah.
It should be, the group of 5 should be working together to schedule these games closer to, so that you know who you're playing.
Yes. And you get this, and you get a buildup of, we win this game.
I mean, Brad, like every year, we could have Appalachian State playing, BYU.
Yeah.
We could have Marshall playing Coastal. We could have UCF, playing Appalachian State.
Yeah.
You could have these games every year because the Power 5 is going to make their money. They're going to do their schedules in advance.
Yes.
But with the group of 5, why not see who you can actually match up against and get some marquee games? I saw another comment on Twitter that, love to see, teams that or guys that can get things done. It's cool that they made this game happen. And I think that the rest of the conference, or I'm sorry, the rest of the country and the group of 5 can learn from this.
I think so too. I want to go back to my question. I don't think this helps anyone.
No.
Because especially in the minds, if BYU dominates Coastal Carolina, they say, well, it's Coastal Carolina.
Right.
Coastal Carolina is not sniffing the playoff. So they beat BYU. They're like, congrats, top 15, welcome.
Congrats. The only thing that would have helped BYU or Coastal Carolina is beating an Ohio State or a Clemson or an Alabama.
Yep.
Honestly, I mean, that's what it comes down to. Schedule Power 5 teams.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in this year, obviously we can't really be doing that with the short notice. But these 2 programs can.
Yeah.
Because they have that flexibility this year. Another comment I wanted to make about the game real quick is that game day is going to be there. And, again, it just would love to have Coastal given that, or I would love for them to have that opportunity to experience a game day.
It's unfair.
It sucks.
Yeah.
There's gonna be no fans in the stands. It's a huge game, top 25 matchup for a program that probably never thought they were gonna see a football game like this.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden, game day is on the way.
At least they get a limited amount of fans in the stands. Thank God.
Yeah, which is fine. But you know what I mean.
I know what you
so
mean.
Stop saying that. You've been saying it every year. You're like, hey, no, it's not the same. To me, it's like there's nothing. There's nobody there.
No one. It's empty.
Speaking of, the Rose Bowl just announced they're not having any fans this year. So I'm assuming that the Sugar Bowl is going to follow behind, and we're not going to have anybody at the playoff games.
Whoa, chill. The South is going to have fans.
All right, yeah.
It's the South.
All right. We'll see if the playoff wants to make sure that they have
if the whole SEC
the same
is allowing
rules.
Fans, they're allowing fans.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay, so that's our next game.
What's next?
We have number 10, Indiana, taking on number 18, Wisconsin.
Let's move it along
Wisconsin is a 14-point favorite.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and be quick with this. I'm taking Indiana, even without Michael Penix Jr. Indiana 6-0 against the spread, 4-0 against the spread, and their last 4 is under deck. We know there's no Michael Penix Jr. We know that Jack Tuttle is coming in as a four-star sophomore quarterback. But listen, Vegas set this line with the news of Penix. This is no surprise. They knew that 14 looks attractive to bettors. We got to take Wisconsin. Wisconsin turns the ball over way too much for Indiana not to score points.
Wisconsin scored 7 points against Northwestern
Yes.
a couple weeks ago. And Indiana's defense has looked good all year. They looked really impressive in the Maryland game.
It really, yes.
Outside the Ohio, but even the Ohio State game, their defense played well enough to keep them in the game.
Yeah.
Listen, guys, just because Penix is out, doesn't mean you count Indiana out automatically. I'm
Correct.
taking Indiana plus 14 here as well. I think Indiana can win the game.
Yes, I think they're a total live
I think they can absolutely win the game. Jack Tuttle is a competent backup. He's a former Elite 11 QB, 4-star QB.
And he's not a service backup.
Right.
Like he's a quarterback.
Exactly. Tom Allen's been recruiting, guys.
Yeah.
It's not just guys like Penix. It's not just the guys we've been seeing. Yeah, we are 100%. And honestly, Wisconsin's only played 3 games. I don't know what version of Wisconsin that I'm going to get. And with 14, the line opened at 10. That was with Penix. I get 4 more points just because Penix isn't playing.
Yes.
I'm taking it. And also, Indiana, they're 6-0 against the spread this year. I bet the team that's done. Ride it until it's done.
Well, we got 1 loss against the spread when we rode Washington State to glory.
Right. All right. Up next, I wanted to talk about this one here. Number 3, Ohio State at Michigan State. Crossing my fingers that the game happens. The line opened at 24.5. It's now down to 23.5, and I feel good about that number. Ohio State last year total, they were 9-5 against the spread, but they were really hot in the regular season covering the spread. They did not cover at the end of the year against Wisconsin, and they did not cover against Clemson, I believe.
Yep.
They did not. That's right. So they were 9-3 in the regular season. This is a good Ohio State team. Why am I bringing up those numbers? Because they're only 2-2 against the spread this season. So because it's 23.5, I feel really good about this number. I think it should be 28 or 29. I think Ohio State's going to be really hyped up to play this game, and I just think it's a good spot for them.
Man, you said it. Ohio State's going to come into this game with a chip on their shoulder, being
Yeah.
ranked 4th.
Right.
Michigan State's not bringing much to the table
Yeah.
in this game. They are, 3-5 against the spread in their last 8 as an underdog. But Ohio State beats bad teams bad.
Yeah.
It's not like Ohio State just goes out there. Like, Ohio State's not like a Clemson. When Clemson plays bad teams, Clemson just works on things. That's what Dabo is just trying to say. What can we do in this situation? No Ryan Day on the field doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter. Think about this overreaction from Vegas, guys. Ohio State was a 21-point favorite against Indiana.
Yeah.
And now against a Michigan State team, it's only 2.5 points higher. To me, that is a gross overreaction from Vegas.
Yeah.
And I'm putting everything down on Ohio State.
Chip on your shoulder game. I'm taking that heartbeat.
All right, what's your game?
My game, we have number 5, Texas A&M Aggies, 7-point favorite versus Auburn Tigers. Unranked Auburn coming off a bad, gross loss. But listen, they played the number 1 team in the country. I am backing the Auburn Tigers. Texas A&M in their last 5 against Auburn, 1-4 straight up. Texas A&M played the most boring game against LSU.
It was
If
horrible.
you play a game where your quarterback only throws 105 yards against Auburn, you will lose the game. Auburn is a live underdog here. I'm not taking money line because I do think Texas A&M is going to win the game, but this will be a tough game. I do see there will be points of the game where Texas A&M is fighting for their lives.
I'm not betting on Auburn. That's just bottom line. I'm not betting on Auburn. I know it was Alabama. I get it. But even before Alabama, I don't think they looked good. I will say that LSU game for A&M was ugly. And to me, I still don't understand after that game how anybody has Florida behind A&M. I don't care about the head-to-head. A&M is regressing. Their offense is regressing. Like, Mond did not look good. He looked horrible. I think he had like 20 incompletions in that game.
He went 11 for 34.
I mean, what are you doing? That's horrible. And they're lucky that LSU just has no identity right now.
Nothing. They don't have a defense and offense.
They have nothing. I mean, LSU
is a skeleton
looks
of themselves.
Lost on the football field. Just lost.
Yes.
Largest, just a side note here. LSU, I think, is 29.5 point underdog to Alabama. It's
Yeah.
the largest line being an underdog for a former national champion ever. I mean, just what has happened to you?
Jesus.
But anyway, that's another story. I'm going to go ahead and roll with A&M here, -7. I think the Mon can do enough to get back on track and cover the 7, and it's more of me just not wanting to bet on Auburn. But honestly, I don't really want to bet on either of these teams. I think A&M's overrated. I'm tired of it. It's like I remember last weekend I was in Ohio, and I was in my feels because Ohio State, the game was canceled. I went to Ohio to watch the game with my family. I was mad. I was on Twitter all weekend.
Yeah.
And eventually I was like, just randomly, I was like, man, I really hope LSU finds a way to beat down A&M because I'm tired of hearing about them. You're like, Miles, are you okay? Like, what's...
Well, listen.
I'm so tired of this.
You might
they're overrated.
A&M always has that slip-up game. Welcome to the picture, Auburn.
Yeah.
Bounce back game,
Sure.
huge letdown spot.
I would
for
love to
Texas
see it
A&M.
because I think A&M's overrated, but I'll go ahead and side with A&M -7. All right.